Okay guys, so design part 2, part of the systems lifecycle. Last lesson we looked at DFDs, system flowchart and data collection forms. Today we're going to be looking at screen layouts, validation routines and data dictionaries. We're also going to very quickly consider different software and hardware sort of specifications, that kind of thing. So when we're using Microsoft Access, if you think of a form that you've created before, then basically you know the sort of fonts you're going to use. You're going to try and make it quite simple to use. We know that we want to move everything at the same time to try and tell our user, what they're doing or what they're filling in. So we need to be thinking about what makes a good screen layout, and by a screen layout we literally mean a form on Access. It's probably the best example I can give you. Now, when we're thinking about what makes a good one, there's loads and loads of different ones. I'm going to start to read this out and I want you to tell me if you can kind of work out what it sounds like. So, we're looking for, we want to use colour sparingly, and usually, and I've put usefully, but usually we want to use it to kind of help us to identify what a field might be. So let's say that it's a field that we definitely want, or a mandatory field that we need our users to fill in, then we might make it red to highlight it, for example. We also want to use consistent fonts and sizes. We want to make sure that it's simple and we have lots of different white space. We have enough white space so it doesn't look too cluttered. We also want to make sure the field names tell our users what they're inputting. If there's an area where they need some more information about what they're filling in or what format to fill it in, we're going to give them that as well. And we want to use the correct data types, checkboxes, tick boxes. Basically, these sort of things are really important. If we've got a yes/no question, a tick box is going to be better than a drop down, or just the user typing in yes or no. Now, you might be thinking, I do kind of recognise what they're talking about. I'm sure I've read that somewhere before. Sounds familiar, right? Yeah? Well, that's because it's really, really similar to a data collection form, except this one is obviously online. We're talking about one that we interact with on the computer. So it's really similar to data collection forms. Basically, we're thinking Microsoft Access. How can we make our form as clear as possible? That's the idea. They're not quite the same though. So the data collection form, we don't want to use any colour. Screen layout, we do. So there's a couple of really subtle differences. Basically, one's at the computer, one is offline. That's it. So you guys are going to do an activity where you go and find one. Now, what might make a really good design for a screen layout is not necessarily telling the user what font you want them stuff, but you might detail on each part with different lines and that kind of thing, what font is, how big the font is, and maybe why it's that size. So if you were making it for another designer, that would be something that would be really, really useful for them. Okay, so let's talk about validation routines. Now, you guys have seen these before, we've spoken about them before, definitely in databases. And basically, we just want to make sure that our users putting in information correctly. Whatever information they're putting in might not be right, but let's make sure that it's put in the correct format or in the right way. So I'm going to give you a really, really quick description of some of these, because obviously, I don't want to waffle on for ages, so we'll try and make this as quick as possible. So present might just be that the surname exists, okay? And an error might come up saying, please enter a surname. A range might be something like, if we're, starting a nightclub, we want to make sure that they're at least 18 years of old. If they're going for their driving test, we want to make sure they're not younger than 16, or they can't apply till they're 17 in the UK. In Thailand, you seem to be able to drive from about 9 years old. So maybe, we would lower it depending on where we are. Also the type. Well, I haven't filled this in. Driving license at over 9 years old. In fact, if you're applying for it, doesn't matter. You get the idea. Type. Well, if we're taking someone's date of birth, we don't want them to input the word 2. We want them to put in the integer 2 or the number 2. Integer. This is why I'm a computer teacher. Right click, spell check. We also want to make sure that the length of what they're putting in is correct. So let's say that they are putting in an email address. We know it needs to be longer than 3 digits. So we might just put longer email is longer than 3 digits. Okay, so you could even link this up with other ones. So for example, email, we want it to be longer than 3 digits. We'd also want it to have an @ symbol. So that would be part of that check specifically for an email. Format, so this is the layout. Format we're talking about is layout. So if we were doing date of birth, okay, so this might be 20th of June 1992. Why has it chosen that date? I've heard that date before. Hint, my birthday. So what we've got here is DD, day, MM is month. So it's going to be something like 20/06/1992. In here, you would put an example. Over here, emails longer than 3 digits. You can put an example of an accepted email and a rejected one, for example. I'm not going to go into loads of detail on that because you're about to do it anyways. So what we've got is a very, very basic validation routine. So these are what we're going to be testing against to make sure our users entered information in the correct way. So data dictionaries, we've done it many times. We're probably bored of it. This is when we're basically on paper outlining how a database is laid out. We're thinking ahead, we're thinking what information do we want from our user and what might we do with that information in future. So let's say that we want to take in information about our customers and we work for a car company. We might record what car they have, we might record their address. All these things we're thinking about is, well, if we want to identify whose car it is, we can do that. If we want to send them a letter in future to tell them that their car's run over an octopus in the car park, then we can quite easily email them, we can write them a letter quite quickly, so on. So whenever we're doing a data dictionary, we should always be thinking about the future. How is this going to help us in the future? What information do we need our user to take? And then we make a data dictionary based on that. When you go away and do a data dictionary, which you're about to do, go on the internet and find yourselves a template. A template usually has an attribute, a data type, a field size, and the format that it's in. And usually somewhere you'd indicate if it was a primary key or not. So for example, car registration would be a good primary key, and we'd indicate that on our data dictionary. Okay, so hardware and software requirements. Yes, it is part of analysis, but at this stage we're just going to be thinking, what hardware do we need to run this bit of software that we're making? Is it an add-on software? Do we need, if we're making a new database, do we need to be able to run Microsoft Access? Did we run it before? Is this a new hardware software requirement? If it is, do we have the hardware to back it up? If we don't, what do we need to buy? What does our company or our client need from us? What do we need them to go out and buy? So it's really, really simple. It's very similar to the last one, but now we're starting to think about, well, if we've made our new program, what might that program need in terms of hardware capabilities? That's it. So I tried to do that as quickly as possible. I'm now going to show you what you're going to be doing online. So what one have I put it on? So basically, if you go to Classroom, you're basically going to tell me the difference. Same here, and then this one, you've got basically a scenario, and then you're going to create the validation types. You can copy the ones that were in the one I just went through. It'd be cool if you could do it from your own memory, that'd be great. And again, you're going to fill this in based on this part here. For data dictionary, you're making, and please keep it simple, a very, very simple data dictionary based on this scenario as well. Lastly, hardware, software, that's a totally different question and something that's not applied to this. Shouldn't take you too long, it's all pretty straightforward, and to be honest, you've done it all before. We're just thinking about how we're going to design our system, what requirements is the system going to need. Basically, what's it going to cost us? What software and hardware do we need to make sure this runs nicely? I'll be quiet now, that is it. Go.